Welcome everybody. This is Norman Kochannek here from I'm not from my normal channel. I'm actually from Xtra Time, and I'm here to represent what is a gaggle of amazing stars from the journalistic world and also from the world of fans. That is the Bharat Army. I have a great deal of pleasure in introducing Deep Dasgupta here, who is based. He's in a stronghold in Mumbai in quarantine. Say hello, Deep.
Hi everyone.
I also have an esteemed gentleman there as a Nikhil Naz, who's actually based in Delhi, who also represents ESPN, and he is a magnificent host as well that I've heard a lot about. Hi, Nick.
It was lovely to be on the show with you, Norman. I mean, I almost started introducing the show as soon as the bumper finished because that's the job that I do. But for once, I had to be quiet and listen for you to start. But it's good being here.
I have the same problem. I'm not hosting as well. I have this desire to talk. Yeah. And last but not least, we're joined by one of the Bharat Army members based in Mumbai, Sanjit Desai. How are you? Nice to meet you.
Thanks, Norman. Really excited to be on the show and representing Bharat Army and being the voice for the fans right now in this session, and really looking forward to the show.
It's amazing format that Deep Sen, who we all know from Xtra Time, has put together here. He's taken on a great mix of great sports journalists, presenters, the fans, which are the most important lifeblood of cricket as well as Indian cricket, all here to talk about the IPL in its 14th season. Not in the UAE this time. We're back in India, aren't we? So we have to adjust to Indian time, IST for me. The reality is we have a great format. We've got cricket on from tomorrow, which is April 9th, all the way to May 30th. Tens of hundreds of games, a great contest, 8 very well balanced teams. Well, at least some more than others, which we'll talk about. Some teams, I would argue, that have a hunger to win. Some teams are expected to win. We're going to see that mix of players and see how they fit. The actual auction was quite fervent with the likes of Chris Morris and my very own Pat Cummins from Australia, who bought a mere small property of 9.5 million Australian dollars, some 54 cores only recently, which I provided an update on for Xtra Time. So it's great to have you guys here. Most of us will be on almost every night for both pre and post matches discussions, not unlike the formats you would see in most cases, but we're going to be extra special. We're not going to be as glossy as the social media pages. All the different 8 teams have got a very positive slant, haven't they? A lot of cakes, a lot of birthdays, a lot of games, a lot of celebrations, a lot of high-powered speeches. But I think we need to get down to the nuts and bolts as well here and talk about some of the real facts. The frustrations of the teams. Obviously, some of the teams are heavily in quarantine or at different stages of quarantine. You've got, for example, 2 South African bowlers landing rather late, as in Norjay and Rabada. The reality is there'll be some that won't be ready. Quinton de Kock won't be ready for Mumbai Indians. It's going to be a very interesting mix of players. Jofra Archer, still in mothballs, they're getting his injury sorted out, which is actually not just an elbow injury, it's a chronic elbow injury, which distinctly tells me it won't be getting any better that soon as they predict. A lot of the English players have had the ability to stay here longer. The Owen Morgans of the world, the Ben Stokes are all here. The Sam Currans, they're all here having played and had ready on good form in the recent matches in the locations like Ahmedabad and Pune. We're also, Sanjit, we're waiting on Naresh Mansur Khan from Pune to turn up as well. He is one of the Bharat Army people. Before we get started with Deep and Nick and Sanjit, I wanted to talk about one of our major collaborations in this particular broadcast, which will be the Bharat Army, and a bit about the history. I mean, there are plenty of people that would know all about them, but I found the interesting bit of history to me, having started with the Bharat Army in the 1999 World Cup, in particular the match between India and Pakistan is where it emanated there in England. And the likes of Rajesh Patel was one of the founders of the organisation, a great man, has brought together an amazing group. They have an amazing number of members. I think it's well over 100,000, 1 lakh in membership and followers. They have also close to well over 1 million on their social media platforms. They've got incredible coverage. What a magnificent body of people to have support India, as in the Bharat Army. We do have the Barmy Army, of course, in England, We have an element of that with the Swami Army in Australia. But realistically, the Bharat Army are a force to be reckoned with. And I think they're going to be a great part of this platform. We're going to have a lot of their people on deck here to talk. Sanjit's the first one. I'm not sure whether you were meant to be the best looking one. Is that why you were picked, Sanjit? I'm not sure. I think you were telling me that before you're the best looking. I'm not sure. But anyway, the reality is we have an incredible bunch. And we have some pretty handsome dudes there as well in Deep Dasgupta. I mean, your female following must be through the roof now with all your efforts on the various programs you're on.
Easy, Tiger, easy.
And Nick, you look like a handsome devil yourself. I think you've got a fair following on ESPN. But of course, there's me, and I'm not going to brag, but I'm quite handsome. I've got a lovely little growth and beard there. I've got my followers, like my mother. She's a very good follower. All right, well, we'll get back to some facts here. The reality is the IPL is upon us. Isn't it an amazing tournament? It's the pinnacle. I really do think that. And I must quote what Bure Majunda today wrote one of his columns. He talked about this being the BCCI's D-Day. This is a major event for them in the reality of how the COVID-19 scenario is unfolded, the ability to put games on at all, the reality with the fans not being there and the media even not being there, but having the strength of character to put this forward, I think is pretty commendable. I'm from Australia, of course. In Australia, we have a situation where COVID doesn't seem to exist. It's quite bizarre. No masks, no protection. We're walking freely, nightclubs, etc. All right, I might hand the reins over to Deep for your first impressions as this episode starts off the whole series. And we'll talk all about the IPL. What's your thoughts?
To start off with, Norman, I guess you mentioned something about BCCI organizing this. I think it's a huge effort, especially in these times where it's not easy. I mean, organizing IPL in itself, because let's not forget it's obviously a huge cricket tournament, one of the best T20 tournaments in the world. But also the fact that it's not just about the players; it's an industry in itself. So let's not forget it's not just about the players, about the franchise. It's about a lot of people who are involved, starting from events to hospitality. I mean, it's a big thing, and to organize this tournament at this point in time, I think it's huge. So yeah, and it's been good so far. I think UAE was absolutely phenomenal. It was magical under those conditions. I think this is not going to be easy, but this should be a good one. And as far as cricket is concerned, listen, I thought, looking at the teams, the last season was one of the most competitive teams, one of the most balanced IPLs that you've seen before. And I think this year it's not going to be any different. I think all the teams in the auction, they've actually strengthened themselves and their squad. So it's only going to get better. So looking forward to this tournament where I think all 8 teams are almost equally balanced.
Excellent. Nick, what's your take on the IPL for 2021?
Well, I know there's plenty of talk here, Norman, about should the IPL go ahead with the growing number of cases of corona here. But, I, as a cricket fan, and I'm going to talk as a fan, I mean, I would love for IPL to happen, primarily for multiple reasons. One, as Deep alluded to, that it is an industry, right? I mean, a lot of things are riding on the IPL, and it's not just the players, but there's an entire ecosystem that works around the IPL. Secondly, as we speak, every sport is being played. We have the Champions League. Football matches happened last night. As we speak, the Indian hockey team is in Argentina playing a series. We had a shooting World Cup right here in Delhi a couple of weeks ago. So if every sport is being played, then why make an exception for the IPL? I think in India, because it's the showstopper of sorts, so it becomes an easy target for everyone. And in that spirit, I'm really happy that the BCCI has gone ahead with the tournament. I mean, I'd have to say, and this is like a disclaimer, that we may not have a smooth sailing sort of a tournament that we saw in the UAE because protocols were different. Things were under control, not too much of traveling. We might have circumstances here in this IPL where you'll have a few players that will test positive. But I guess, you got to keep playing. You take those players out, take them out of the bubble, they quarantine, and however things pan out from there. So in that regards, I'm really looking tournament, although it's going to be the last tournament that we see with 8 teams. As you know, the next onwards, we're going to have 10 teams again, and we'll have to see how that goes, though we got a glimpse of it in previous season when you had the likes of Gujarat Lions and Pune also play. So last tournament with 8 teams, new rules coming into play with so much controversies around the soft signal, 90 minutes. You're going to gauge in terms of one inning, how you're going to find those players. So various new rules coming in. So all in all, I'm really looking forward to it. And as Deep mentioned, I'm just going to wrap up here. As you mentioned, the last tournament was probably the closest. We didn't know who was going to make the top 4 right to the end. And I'm hoping that continues in this season as well.
That's great, Nick. And we'll certainly get into more detail as to what we predict as the top 4 or even the bottom 4 for that matter. And more importantly, the grounds that are being used and the conditions of the grounds are certainly relevant. But before we get into those details, which we'll spend a lot of time on, and clearly some of the captaincy movements, which are very significant, as a la Punt, for example, we might get Sanchit's handle as a very fervent Bharat Army supporter and a fan in the true sense of the word. From your perspective, what are you looking forward to? What do you see in IPL 2021?
Well, certainly it is a big thing from BCCI to organize an IPL, right? 5 to 6 months after organizing the 2020 IPL, and I mean to organize such a big tournament twice in a span of 12 months. It's really incredible. And as a fan, I believe that even without the presence inside the stadium due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the fans' voice still keeps on being heard due to the impact of social media and the rise of digital media in the cricketing world. And we actually see various franchises interacting with the fans across the world through their social media handles. And I think the connection between the fans and the teams have increased drastically in this recent tough times, and I believe that it is only going to get better and better in this difficult world that we are currently living in. And as far as the expectations of the season up ahead is concerned, I believe that it's going to be an exciting season. Hoping that everything goes on well and hoping for the best safety of the players and the staff, because to organize such a big event, it will take massive efforts. And I believe if we could organize it as closely, as smoothly as possible as we did in 2020, I think it's a big take from BCCI.
And it's great that Tabasas has actually put forward some of the questions, because clearly we have a number of questions that will be coming up throughout the program, and we encourage that. Please, viewers, make sure that you ask as many questions as you want, and we'll try and answer as many as we can. We have one there from Sarab Desai. He says, IPL must go on without crowd. It's safe to go ahead with the IPL. I believe that's a fairly strong movement as to it being safe, as long as the bubbles are effective. I know we've had, like as recently as, I think, with Daniel Sams being tested COVID positive. He, of course, is asymptomatic, which concerned me the most. The fact that he was asymptomatic was less notable. Daniel Sams I know very well. In fact, here I am in Coogee. Daniel Sams, I could throw a stone to his house. A great ambassador for Australia and a great guy. But it's unfortunate that he's down with that particular virus. But take a step back for a moment. The reality is that we've been well prepared for this. The examples have been the way the Australian series went, the way the early stages of the England-India series has gone, the evidence of how the way that we handled Ahmedabad and Pune. I think there's been some great examples where it's worked. I think there's been some difficulties along the way, but I think India are prepared for this. Let's hope it doesn't get any worse. That's our only concern. But I'm sure the CCI and the various people involved will actually make the right decisions at the right time. But I believe we're going ahead, and it's going to be a very strong start. And of course, we've got the first game on April 9th, which we'll get into, between Mumbai Indians and RCB, the Royal Challengers Bangalore. What an incredible start. You could well be looking at a final there. Although my little tip, and you guys will get used to this, I've become a Delhi Capitals fan more and more. Although I am deep rooted with Kolkata Knight Riders, Delhi Capitals is coming to the fore. We have another question from I Am Faded, and he's been on before. This year's IPL will be the most competitive IPL played, and certainly of the T20 World Cup is ahead. What a great platform for that. Very, very true. It will be very competitive. A lot of players are jockeying for positions, if none more than India itself, with the Ishan Kishans coming to the fore now, and obviously the likes of Rishabh Pant as captain. All right, guys. This is the way I wanted to start this. I wanted to talk about all 8 teams, but I wanted to get, without notice, one word that sums up each team in your mind when you first think of these teams. I'll start with, let's say, Kolkata Knight Riders. Deep, what's the first word that comes to your mind when you think of that team?
You stumped me there. KKR. I don't know, man. Seriously, I mean, one word. I mean, listen, I'm struggling to find a word for.
I'm not expecting you to use one word. It's something of a.
Let me just quickly address a question that came about the security and safety question that came up a while ago. Sure. Listen, I mean, all of us, we took commercial flights to reach where we have, right? So we've been in contact with the outside world. So let the bubble settle down. I mean, the number of cases that you hear right now might not be as much. There might be a few because, as Nick mentioned before, because there'll still be travel involved and things like that. But, people are getting into the bubble. Once the bubble settles down and everyone's had their quarantine and 7 days or whatever it is, I think those numbers will also settle down. So let's not, it's never good to hear about anyone getting tested positive, but those things won't happen. As far as your question goes, Norman, I'm stumped, man. I don't have a word for any other franchise, but
that's okay. Yeah. That's okay. We can put that to one side. But I am interested to hear about the bubble situation, because you yourself have been through several stages of the bubble, whether it be in the commentary, through the Test series or the ODI T20s. What's your feeling of how that's going? You've been through quite a few.
Yeah, I mean, this is my third bubble, and it's fine. I mean, you know what? I actually feel a lot safer when I'm in the bubble because I'm not in touch with the outside world. My movements are restricted. I mean, that can be a little painful, but end of the day, I know, the areas which I have access to are extremely safe. So I'm not paranoid in terms of when I was back at home for 3 days or 4 days when I was at home, I was paranoid going outside the home or meeting people, but at least when you're in a bubble, you at least know that everyone inside the bubble is safe. So yeah, from that perspective, you feel a lot more safer inside a bubble. But you need to get used to it because obviously there are restrictions. There's so many things you can't do. For the first 7 days, the most challenging part is the isolation part. I haven't seen a soul in the last 6 days. Apart from the gentleman who comes and delivers my food outside the door. That's about it. I haven't met anyone else. So physically, so that's a challenging part. But I guess, once you've been through one of those bubbles, you kind of get used to it. And also you understand why you are in this position.
Well, a number of the players that have been on tour, let's say, throughout the series that has just occurred with English that have stayed on here for the IPL, they would be, I guess, more honed in on how to handle the actual conditions of quarantine. But I think it's particularly difficult when a series starts, when you have players that haven't had much of a chance to play. Like a number of the players that are in the squads haven't had much exposure other than training at nets practice and the like of true match practice. I know that some of the teams actually had practice matches between their team only as recent in the last few days. And that seems to have gone down well. From your perspective, Nick, what have you seen from what's your feel on the way the players have handled both the quarantine and their training leading up to the series?
So Norman, interestingly, I did a piece for a sports magazine right after the last IPL, and I did speak to a few stakeholders in the IPL about this life in a bubble, and not just cricket. I spoke to some other sportsmen as well, and there were very interesting perspectives, and I could see both sides of the coin. There were some that felt that it has a lot of disadvantages. For example, a couple of players told me that one thing that you can't do in a bubble is have some sort of downtime. He says that when you're not in a bubble, you played a game. If it wasn't a good game, you came back, you met some other friends who were non-cricketing friends, and you completely forgot about what happened, and it was a bad day in office, and then you motivated yourself for the next game. And the player, I spoke to Piyush Chawla, who at that time was playing for Chennai Super Kings, and he said that in the last IPL 2020, Chennai especially went through a very rough phase, as you know, in the IPL. And he said for us, it was difficult really to get out of that rut, because one bad performance followed by another one, and all you're doing is meeting the same players for dinner, for breakfast, chatting to them. There is no outside contact at all, and that actually pulls you further down into the rabbit hole. So that's the disadvantage. Then I spoke to a few coaching members, coaching staff of other IPL teams, and they saw some advantages in the bubble. For example, they said that they never got any individual time to spend with a player and really understand him, because during bubble days, players would come out after the game and then go out with their families or friends outside, and you never got any personal time with them. Now the coaching staff because you were in a bubble and those are the only people you could interact with, these guys got a lot of time to spend individually with a player, and most coaches were of believe that each player is very different and you really need to understand him inside out and then really help him perform better on the field. So that was an advantage of the bubble. So as I said, there were pros and cons, and everything came to light after the last IPL.
And we are certainly getting a very big insight into the players, the way they're handling things as per the various social media platforms. We're getting in-depth one-on-one conversations. We're getting interaction with the players. We're seeing how they're handling that and how they're coming about. Now, we've been joined by, and I'm pretty sure we've got one of our other Bharat Army members here joining us, haven't we? So this must be Naresh. Is that Naresh?
Yes, Norman. Sorry, I had some connectivity issues. I got late. Sorry about that, everyone.
Not a problem. Naresh Banchakani, you are from Pune, which is where we've played a fair bit of cricket of late. And you're joined, obviously, by your fellow colleagues in Sanchit. In fact, I'll go to you now, Sanchit. We'll talk about what we're doing here at the moment, Naresh, is we're talking a bit about how the players are coping with the current quarantine situations right through to their training schedules and their camaraderie around heading into the IPL, which they're now only a day away from. From your perspective, Sanchit, what's your feelings? What do you feel for the players? What do you see?
I think it's really difficult for the players, and to play competitive cricket in such a COVID-impacted world is certainly really a difficult task. And to talk about certain players who have not seen their family since a long time, if we consider Rishabh Pant, who has been in the bubble since before the last IPL have begun in August 2020, I believe. So these players have actually spent their times away from their family, and really this actually has an impact on the mental aspect of the players as well. And I believe that the mental health of the players should be taken really care of in this COVID impacted world. And really, as a fan, I could just feel really sorry for some players, because to play such a competitive cricket at such a level in these tough times, it is not easy to analyze it in front of a television, in front of your mobile phone when you're watching them play, but a lot goes on behind the scenes as well. So it's really commendable that most of these players have managed to overcome certain challenges in the bubble, and we have seen a wonderful series happening in Australia as well, where it was actually a historic series. So we have seen the action on the pitch as fans, but really a lot has went behind the scene as well. So to make such cricketing action happen, I think it's a really commendable effort by all the organizers and as well as the players.
Very good point. Before we move on to your comments there, Naresh, we might just have a quick discussion about the teams somewhat now. Obviously, there are 8 teams. We've talked about the further 2 that are joining in the next IPL season. But the 8 teams that are there's some clear distinctions between teams that seem to be better balanced than others, those that are expected to win, especially on paper. Now, we would all agree with Mumbai Indians being, on paper, the forms team, having won 2 championships leading into this. They've actually retained their players. And I was mentioning before, Deep, about a word to sum up a team. You'd have to argue with Mumbai, the term retained might be the best way to talk about, because they've actually done a very good job of retaining their players, haven't they? So that's what we'll talk a bit more about that now. Naresh, before we go on, would you like to quickly mention your thoughts on what you see with the IPL coming up and what the players are going through?
Yeah, first, I think hats off that BCCI is going ahead with the league and all those protocols put in place. Yes, it's not only about high risk; it's also about a very high level of test that everything goes very smoothly in the next 2 months. They have appointed bubble integrity managers for each team to ensure that everything is as per the required protocol. So yes, I think it's a very good move that the show has to go on. They experienced that in UAE, though it was a little different. There is a little bit of domestic travel involved here. That would be something that will be very closely looked at, that everything goes as per plan. But yeah, unfortunately, I belong to the state where the numbers are really moving up. So yeah, the next 10 days very critical, the games in Mumbai. But I think, yeah, everything will settle down well after that. Yeah.
I'm just looking through the grounds that are being used. Pune is not a part of that, I can see. Predominantly, like the Mumbais, the Chennais, the Delhis, Ahmedabad, Bengaluru, they're the location, Kolkata, which are also being used. All right, we have another question there. Which teams will benefit from not playing at their home grounds or venues, and which teams will be, in fact, most disadvantaged? That's a very good point. The fact that none of the teams are truly playing at their home grounds. What's your thoughts? I would argue Chennai will suffer quite a bit because of their boutique ground that they have there in Chennai. That would be a disadvantage for them. We'll go first to Deep. What is your thoughts on teams that are either most advantaged or not disadvantaged?
Right. I mean, I think, as you mentioned, CSK. I mean, because most of these teams, because the last big auction happened a while ago, so everyone kind of had that team build around the conditions that are available at their home venues. For example, CSK, Chepauk, Mumbai, Wankhede. So you see the Mumbai team. There are a lot of power hitters because it's a high-scoring venue. So a lot of power hitters, fast bowling because spinners generally don't do that well in Wankhede. Same with CSK, it's the other way around. So I think these teams, where the conditions were kind of extreme, will find it a little more challenging. I think the team which will have a more of an advantage when you look at it is SRH, because SRH, if you look at their venues, they are playing predominantly in Delhi and Chennai, which the conditions are very similar to their home conditions in Hyderabad. So their team is kind of built or set up around those conditions. So I think if you look at the venues, I think SRH would be one of the teams which might this whole system might help them a bit.
And they're also seen as a dark horse, aren't they? The way that their team composition is put together, they could well perform with the advantage of the grounds you're talking about and their player selection. And under the hungry Dave Warner for his performances, that's certainly true. What about you, Nick? What's your thoughts?
Well, I agree with Deep. I mean, there were certain teams that benefited a lot with their conditions. Chennai, for one, as you mentioned. Mumbai was another team that benefited playing in the Wankhede. It wasn't a really spin-conducive venue, and as you know, spin isn't their biggest strength. They have a good fast bowling lineup, so that's what they went with. Hyderabad had a kind of an advantage. They had a bigger stadium compared to all other teams, and they enjoyed that. Kolkata changed it and transformed. I mean, there was one Kolkata team that had Eden Gardens that would really help the spinners vis-a-vis the Kolkata that we see now, which started assisting fast bowlers. So there was a sea change in the conditions that day, and they kind of adapted to it. I think the team that would be least affected would be the likes of Delhi, which I don't think got too much of an advantage playing at home, or the likes of Punjab Kings, or even RCB for that matter. And some teams gained a lot of advantage playing at home. The other interesting bit that we got to keep in mind is that now that no one's really playing at home, most pitches might just be the same. So Chennai may not be that spin heavy track that we used to see, or for that matter, you might not have Kolkata helping fast bowlers as it was at a certain given time. So you may see a lot of neutral pitches. You might see a lot of pitches that would have sort of similar characteristics, which wasn't the case in IPLs before this, because not a single team is going to be playing at home. So I think that's another factor that you really have to keep in mind.
All right. Very, very relevant. Very relevant. We'll ask Naresh and Sanjit together. What do you think about this situation? Who's advantaged and disadvantaged by the grounds?
Should I go first or Naresh?
Go ahead.
Yeah, please go ahead, Sanjit.
Yeah, so I believe that SRH have a good advantage with the venues that they have been allotted, solely because of the the strength that they have in their bowling options. You got someone like Rashid Khan and then Mohammad Nabi. These two players share a very important partnership for them in the middle overs as well, because you have seen Mohammad Nabi's caliber with the bat. We have seen that happen in the 2019 World Cup where he played that innings in against India, and then you see that partnership being one of the key partnership for SRH back in the successful 2018 season where they went on to the final. So I believe that is the most underrated partnership for SRH with the ball and also with the bat, because we have seen how Rashid Khan has improved with the bat as well. So I believe SRH has the best advantage for playing in the venues that they have been allowed, and also to an extent, I believe Rajasthan Royals could be a dark horse with the venues that they have been allotted, because mind you, they have been allotted 5 games at the Wankhede where they have had a very good time since their comeback back in 2018, because you see the likes of Ben Stokes, Josh Butler, and all the English players that are currently in the team. They enjoy playing on flatter surfaces, and Wankhede is the best place to bat, and it actually suits the fast bowlers more, only because of the carry and pace that it assists. So I believe that with Rajasthan Royals not being a very spin heavy team, so I believe it could work in the favor of Rajasthan Royals if they could manage to make most of the starts. And to talk about the team that is at most disadvantage, I would agree with the popular view that Chennai Super Kings might find it difficult with the venues that they have been allotted, because they have, I think, 7 to 8 spinners in the team, and to play in a stadium like Wankhede would certainly make them a disadvantaged side.
Over to you, Rajesh. Naresh?
Yeah. So, neutral venue actually neutralizes the entire pitch discussion or the stadium discussion around on the ground they're going to play. And with the summer setting in, definitely after a few games on a similar kind of a pitch, it will slow down a bit. The way the teams are moving, 4 teams moving to one city and playing few games, say about 15 days together. So yeah, I don't see after a couple of days the talk about home conditions or away conditions would matter, to be honest, because if you see the last IPL in UAE, it was probably the closest fought IPL. If you see the point table, it was the net run rate actually deciding, and the last game decided who would be in the top 4. So and that's lots at stake for the players. With the mega auction coming up after this, there's lots which the players are looking forward to. So these things wouldn't honestly matter. It's going to be their skill in any conditions that's going to differentiate.
All right, we've got a question here from Vasant Narayan. It's directed towards you, Deep. How can teams defeat the Mumbai Indians? And he's such a Rishabh Pant fan, and how can you win against him? I think it's fairly relevant. Mumbai Indians and I think Delhi Capitals would certainly be the 2 standout favourites. He has also mentioned that considered using Chris Wokes, who is certainly going to be a prominent bowler because if he can bowl swing. Should the Delhi go bowling heavy to defeat the Mumbai Indians? Well, I mean, that's one of the examples of teams. How do you think you're going to beat Mumbai Indians? How do we beat them?
Right. I think for me, Mumbai Indians, if you look at how, their strength is their batting depth and the number of power hitters that they have. So the only way to stop them is to pick wickets. So for me, I think bottom line is you've got to pick wickets. You've got to go with a bowling unit where you're a lot more aggressive. You're looking to pick wickets, whether it's the first 6, middle or whatever. You can't be defensive against Mumbai Indians. And that's something that I strongly believe in, because if you don't get them out, they will score runs. There's absolutely no 2 ways about it. So this, for me, I think that's what is more important. Also, it'll be interesting to see this year, and I completely agree with Nick as well. I mean, we think about Chepauk and the turning surface because it suited CSK and CSK RSA because it was their home ground. But now that CSK will not be playing in Chepauk, with whether it'll still be a low-scoring venue or whether suddenly you see 180, 190 games happening there. So that's something I think we'll have to wait and see how it pans out. But Mumbai Indians, if it's a low-scoring game, then it becomes more challenging for CSK. The venues that they're playing and the pitches that they're playing are 150, 160 games, then it can get a little trickier then. So I think that's one. Secondly, DC, I think as far as balance of the team is concerned, I think DC is the most balanced side. They've got three quality spinners, they've got fast bowlers, they've got good batting unit with big hitters, and a combination of the Stoinis's and Smiths, say Ajinkya Rahane, Rishabh Pant. So it's very, very well balanced. But the biggest issue is, can they get it right? Can they get the combination? It's not that they have to work too hard, because they've got a template, what they did last season. I think they just need to follow that. And also, I think I'm very excited to see how Rishabh, as a captain, how he performs. Because I just get a feeling, anyways, I might be a little biased there, but I think wicket keepers are natural leaders anyways. So, yeah, next up,
hang on. That's a bit of bias. I'll strike that. We're going to have a little board here on my left-hand corner of deliberate bias. One against your name straight away, deep bias, keeping bias. Okay, right.
Yeah. Right. So I think he'll be fine. I think he'll be fine, and he'll be a good captain. He'll be a good leader.
The reality is, there's no doubt. We hear Ricky Ponting discussing only in the last few days about what he sees with it, and he's a great mentor for the team, a great coaching strength. He talks in terms of when he got involved, Delhi was last. The year following, they came third. Last year, they were second. Where are they heading? First. I think it's a great crescendo to the way that Delhi.
Norman, that bias table of yours, have you put your name up there as well?
All right. I've got another board here for my bias. All right, Nick, you'll get one too. Don't you worry. I'm sure you're going to buy it. But the reality is, they are the team to watch. There's no doubt. We're all expecting Mumbai Indians to do well. Granted, on paper, they certainly deserve that. But we've got the Sunrise Hyderabad. We've got the likes of even RCB now with Maxwell. They're coming through. My word, I mentioned earlier, Steve, about a word for each team. I believe the word hunger needs to be analysed against each team. How much hunger they got to win, and on their on-day performance, how they'll attack that is what I think is relevant here. All right, guys, we've got another question here from Sri Kumar. RCB playing 11. Now, we're getting into playing 11s, which I didn't really want to do just yet, but we could start with a team. I think the most important thing is to actually be able to look at the way the 11s of the team playing, and the RCB playing 11. We've got there is Padikkal, Virat, ABD as in De Villiers, Maxwell, Azharuddin. He's certainly a bowler. Dan Krishnan, I certainly agree with. Finn Allen, Sundar, Kyle Jamieson, of course, Siraj and Sani. That looks like a pretty damn good, solid unit.
There are 5 overseas. There are 5 overseas in that team.
Yeah, there certainly is, and I think that they wouldn't be all in the one team. And I think that's another question we'll get to, is the discussion around who is in the mix for the 4 players. But realistically, that only becomes relevant towards the end of the actual series itself, when you have that team is picked for the finals. But okay, just quickly on that, before we go to the next question, what did you think of that team? Forgetting the 5 that are there, the reality is they have Maxwell on the team. What do you all think about Maxwell's involvement? His importance as an inclusion of the RCB. Yeah.
Who's that for?
RCB, as in Royal Challengers Bangalore.
Nick, why don't you take that? Nick, you want to take that?
Well, anyone of you start.
Yeah, okay. So you want to discuss the playing 11? Sorry, I lost you there. I couldn't hear you very clearly.
Okay, sorry. I'm talking specifically about Maxwell's involvement.
The 4 foreigners? Maxwell, yeah.
Specifically, okay. Maxwell's involvement.
So we already know what they're going to do with Maxwell. I mean, we were at one point taking a wild guess, where is he going to bat? But then Mike Hesson has already come out and said that he sees him as a finisher. He's going to play him in that particular position. So it could be number 4 or number 5. He goes to number 5 if you push someone like Azharuddin and Patidar. So these are 2 young talent that they've got who can really accelerate. So Azharuddin, if he goes up, or Patidar goes up, then I see Maxwell at 5. Then you've also got Dan Krishnan. So I think the role that they're going to give him is going to be of that finisher. One thing that we've seen with Maxwell, and especially with Australia, when you've given him the responsibility of finishing a game, that's where he comes into his own. Even if you see one-day cricket or T20 cricket, it's when you've sent him as a go hell for leather right on top, number 3. That's where I think he tends to lose the plot. He tries to be extra aggressive and get out. So I think Mike Hesson in that sense has really worked him out to really use him towards the end, and then play according to the situation. If you've got a lengthier target to chase, you'll be a bit circumspect to begin with, and then attack later, or vice versa, depending on the situation. So I think that is really sorted. I think the biggest irony of sort, or the injustice of sort for RCB is going to be to keep someone like an Adam Zampa out. I believe that him in white ball cricket has been outstanding, especially for us Indians. Him dismissing Virat Kohli so many number of times, he'd have to be sitting out because you've got someone like a Chahal. So Zampa sits out, then you'll have one between a Daniel Sams or a Christian sitting out, one between a Kyle Jamieson and a Richardson sitting out. So you've got some real good players who'd be sitting out, and that's going to be unfortunate for RCB. And that's a sort of trend we've seen with them. They do pack their team with some good players, but it's not always wisely distributed in terms of the slot. So sometimes you end up having too many players for one particular slot, and then you really find it tough to fit those 4 foreigners.
That's very, very correct. And Maxwell is very much a talking point. He's gone for a fair bit of money. The reality is he is due to perform at some stage. And I think with the right mentors around him, such as AB and also Kohli, that may bring Maxwell out as a free agent, as you're describing. Okay. We'll get both Naresh and Sanjit to talk here now. I don't want to go into the team makeups just yet. It's way too early because there's so many changes we can make to that. The only one that's relevant at this early stage is Quinton de Kock. Looks like he won't be available for the first match, at least, due to the quarantine provisions that he's involved with. Who will open with Rohit Sharma? Is one question I'd like to ask. What do you two guys think? Naresh?
Yeah, so it would have been fair that the winning 11 of the last final starts. But yeah, if Quinton de Kock cannot make it for the first game, we would see Chris Lynn coming in. But maybe we go in with a left-hand, right-hand combinations. Ishan Kishan is ready. He's opened for India against England recently. So you could see Ishan Kishan open with Rohit Sharma, and maybe Chris Lynn comes in at number 4.
I concur with that, actually. Sanjit?
I agree with Naresh. I believe that Ishan Kishan should be the one opening with Rohit Sharma at the top of the order. The reason why I didn't go with the popular opinion on social media that Chris Lynn should be the one replacing Quinton de Kock is because I believe Ishan Kishan's impact with the bat at the top of the order has been really immense for the Mumbai Indians side, and as well as we saw what he did in the India vs England series where he opened and scored the 50 in the debut match. So I believe since Rohit Sharma takes time to get into his groove at the top of the order, and we have seen that he might not have been the star with the bat in the recent years. I think he has scored below 400 runs in the last 3 years and only scored 400 plus in 2019. So we have seen that Rohit Sharma might not be the star of the Mumbai Indians batting lineup, but I believe if he's consistently at the top of the order and with someone like Ishan Kishan who likes to go from ball one, and we have seen in the young crop that the current Indian team is coming through with the likes of Rishabh Pant and Ishan Kishan who just play fearless brand of cricket. I believe that could really work in the favor of Mumbai Indians going forward, because that would allow Rohit Sharma to get into his groove and then go about the things that he does the best.
Well, it certainly is an interesting first match. The fact that we've got Mumbai Indians playing RCB, a lot of these concoctions will come to play very quickly, and it's a great springboard. What a great first game to play, don't you think, guys? It's going to certainly set the platform very early on and set the tone of the tournament based on those two teams. Deep, now, I wanted to ask you about the choice of captains. You obviously, as I do, applaud Rishabh Pant's captaincy in place of the likes of Shreyas Iyer. But what about the overall 8 captains? What's your take on those 8 captains and how they're obviously their level of importance and how they're going to play out in this tournament?
I mean, obviously, captaincy is a very, very important aspect of this format. I think it's a captain-run format because you don't have the time. So it's very important that to have a really good captain who's proactive, who's dynamic in nature, can think on his toes. So I think this is a format where you really, really need a good captain. And to be honest, most of the teams have good captains. I mean, whether it's Warner or KL Rahul or I think Rishabh can be a good captain as well. I mean, we haven't really seen much of him as a captain because I don't think he's led Delhi either. Nick, has he led Delhi? I don't think he's led Delhi. Has he?
Rishabh has. He has. He
He
led
has?
Delhi. He led Delhi in 2017. I'll just give you a quick factoid. He led Delhi in 2017. That's because Ishant was the captain, and then Ishant had to go on a tour with the Indian team, so he took over. Delhi, in fact, reached finals of that Ranji Trophy after a long gap. I think 20 plus years. They reached the final. They lost the final, and in that final, Rishabh made a record of being the youngest captain in a Ranji final, breaking Sachin Tendulkar's record. But then he was quickly removed after that Ranji final for the 50 over domestic leg of domestic cricket in India. So he's captain Delhi. The only downside to that captaincy, he took them to the final. His batting form suffered. So that's going to be very important going forward in the IPL.
Right. So, but generally speaking, I think they're really good captains. I think one of the best captains who's not going to be captaining a side is Kane Williamson, but I'm sure he'll be part of the leadership group there, though.
If I can, Norman, just quickly, just a word on Delhi's captaincy, since we're talking about Rishabh Pant, and I'm not going to mince any words. I think whoever comes after Shreyas Iyer is only going to take the Delhi captaincy a bit higher, and I say that with a lot of understanding of how Delhi functioned in the seasons before. I don't think Shreyas' contribution as captain really helped Delhi as such. One could really make out that it was the coaching staff that ran the team, not so much the captain in Shreyas Iyer. So anyone taking Shreyas Iyer's place as captain in Delhi's team will only make it a little better from what it was before. Will it be as good as taking them to the title? That's another matter. We'll have to wait and watch. The other interesting bit in Delhi's captaincy is going to be how the senior players are going to support Rishabh. Now, you've got to look at some very big names that are in the Delhi camp, right? You've got the likes of Ajinkya Rahane, who many consider one of the best captains that India have, is part of that team, may not be part of every 11. You've got Ravichandran Ashwin, who everyone knows is a thinking cricketer, as captain Kings 11 Punjab. You've got Steve Smith, a former Australian captain. So you've got plenty of stalwarts there in that team. How does he manage those senior players? And are there any ego tussles, or these senior players really come out to help Rishabh Pant, a young captain? So these sort of equations are going to be very important going forward for Delhi specifically.
That's a great point. Very good points, Nick. And your insightfulness is obviously relevant to this. Now, Deep, your parting words, because I believe you've got to leave us shortly. Have you got any parting words you want to say leading into a massive series? Will there be plenty of pre-post discussion? What is your parting words?
Oh, well, my parting words is thank you so much, Norman, for having me over and the team at Extra Time. That's one of the things. And secondly, it was a pleasure having a chat with Sanchit and Naresh and obviously Nick. So yeah, I mean, I'm just looking forward to it. I can't wait for the IPL to start because I think it's going to be one of the most competitive IPLs that we've ever seen, and it should be great. So I hope everyone enjoys it because I will. Thanks,
Steve. That's some great words, and as always, it's pleasurable to have you on TV with us. And look, we're going to be talking a lot more. So I bid you farewell. You've got some other work to do. You're going to leave your quarantine room to go to another quarantine room.
I wish, but yeah, hopefully. And I'll finish tomorrow. I'll be able to get out of the room. But anyways, thanks again, guys. See you later.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, guys. We're going to be going. The plan is we're going for an hour here, so we haven't got long to go. But I think it's been wonderful so far. And I really appreciate both Sanjit and Naresh. Your input's been fantastic. It goes without saying, Nick, your knowledge is beyond reproach. We won't. And I mean, I'm judging that by the number of books you've got behind you. I noticed a lot of journalists, the more books they have, the more they read. Is that right? There's only a handful here, so I'm not as impressive. But
there are not too many cricket books, by the way. A lot of fiction. I love reading fiction.
Yeah,
so
I'm looking at Love is of many splendid things. Oh, no, I can't.
There's a wisdom.
Norman, I would like to add a point of what Nick said is can Rishabh Pant, the stand-in captain, do what Ajinkya Rahane, the stand-in captain, did in absence of Virat Kohli in Australia? So exactly. Yeah, one step ahead. They could make it to the final last year. So that's going to be exciting. And definitely second game on Saturday, watching Dhoni and Pant walk out for the toss. I think that's something we as fans would look forward to.
I mean, I was interviewing a lot of people in Australia, on the streets of Australia, about what they thought about Rishabh Pant. And the common comment was we would have an equation. We would have Chris Gale plus Gilchrist equal Pant, or MS Dhoni divided by a certain player equal Pant. I mean, all these unusual concoctions. But the truth is, he's not the next MS Dhoni as far as Australia is concerned. And I'm sure you agree, he's the first Rishabh Pant, is the way they're describing him, which I love that analogy. As I said to you, we've got the first two games, Mumbai Indians versus RCB and CSK versus DC. What a blockbuster. Quite frankly, you would argue that 3 out of those 4 look like they're in the mix for the finals. CSK are certainly an unknown quantity. Well, they're a known quantity, but unknown as to how they'll play this season. They have to have played better than last season. So it's an interesting breakdown to that. What a great 2 matches. And you guys will be involved with it quite heavily. But I do want to mention something about extra time. We do have, obviously, the collaboration with Bharat Army, which is made very clear is stupendous. We have the ability to be, we're actually on all platforms, from YouTube right through to the Facebooks, the Instagrams, that we've been broadcasted on all those platforms. We really enjoy having the Bharat Army here. You're a force to be reckoned with. When I was in Sydney, everywhere I interviewed, there was a Bharat Army member, and they were as crazy as they could possibly be in a positive sense with their fan worship. It was amazing. And I do appreciate the way they were so, they lent a hand. Whenever we wanted commentary, they were there for us. And I thought that was just brilliant. And I think it permeates right across the whole world. And having been based with Rajas and his work in England has been fantastic. Now, Nick, your discerning eye, and it's a very discerning eye, I must say, I would like your take on and I did mention the one-word analogy before, which didn't sit well with Deep. I do think there's an expression for each team, and I do have a level of hunger. The word hunger, who do you think are the hungriest top 3 teams? Not necessarily the best.
Well, Mumbai is not the hungriest because they're owned by probably the second, the third richest man in the world, so he can feed them a lot. So they're definitely not the hungriest. But yes, they're the favorites to win the title. You asked that question right at the start of the program. How is it that you can beat Mumbai Indians? Someone asked that question, and that's the question that's been on my mind. I have a slight sort of a trend that you can look at, and that possibly could be the answer how you can beat Mumbai Indians, and that's shown to us by Rajasthan Royals in the last 3 seasons, ever since Rajasthan came back into the IPL after that brief suspension. They are the team that have the best record against Mumbai Indians. Mumbai Indians win-loss ratio compared to every other team is over 50%. So they hold an upper hand. It's only Rajasthan, their win percentage is only 16% in the last 3 seasons. And so therein lies the answer. Now, there are 3 trends that Rajasthan did to beat Mumbai Indians. The biggest one, always have Mumbai Indian bat first. So if you're chasing, that's a great idea. The only, out of the 6 games that they played in the last 3 season, Rajasthan have won 5 out of those 6. The only time they lost was when they batted first. So first things first, always chase against Mumbai Indians. 2 other things, if you've got an X-factor bowler, like Rajasthan had a Jofra Archer, don't use him a lot up front because Mumbai tend to keep their wickets and they attack towards the later half of the innings. What they did, Rajasthan, with Jofra is bring him in the middle overs, he gets you a few breakthroughs there, and then bring him at the end, gets you more breakthroughs there, and that's where you can really curtail that total that Mumbai Indians put. And third, and the most important point you got to do against Mumbai Indians, their one biggest Achilles heels is their spin department. Rahul Chahar, Piyush Chawla, and Pandya don't really inspire that sort of confidence in terms of the spin department. They're not the best spinners that you have in town. So when you're playing their spinners, they will end up playing 2 spinners. You got to attack their spinners, not so much their fast bowlers. That's where you get all your runs. So if you follow these 3 little principles, as Rajasthan has shown us, that could be that mantra to beat Mumbai Indians. But for me, they are by far the most clear favorites to win this tournament.
Now, that's excellent, Nick. Rakesh. I've been saying your name as Rajesh, and I apologise. Rakesh. I'll get that clear.
Yeah, Rakesh.
Now, Rakesh, just quickly, on the ground that will be where the finals will happen, Ahmedabad. To me, the teams that get there, it's important to get to the final. But once you're in that final mix, Ahmedabad is the key ground that they'll have to undertake. Tell me what and Sanchit as well, your thoughts on that ground and the significance. Well, it certainly won't be a full stadium, but the conditions of the ground, what we've already seen with the various matches that have been played there with England and India, what's your take on that? What team would you say could be significant against the Mumbai Indians, for example?
Sanchit, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure.
Rakesh or Sanchit?
Yeah, I'll go first. So, the significance of the new Ahmedabad Stadium has been really seen in the recently concluded India vs England series, and it's a shame that such a magnificent stadium could not have full capacity fans because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and especially it is a big blow for the World Cup because it might not have full fans at the time as well. So for any team to come into the playoffs, it is a whole different game whenever a team comes into the playoff. We don't consider the previous league stage form because we tend to see even the teams who finished in the top four don't make the finals. As we saw in the 2016 season when Gujarat Lions couldn't make it. So I believe that the playoffs game are a whole new ball game as compared to the league stages. And to play in such a big stadium like Motera, I think the dimensions of the ground would certainly help teams like maybe even SRH if they make into the playoffs, because they have been used to playing in such kind of grounds back in Hyderabad. So it is actually going to be really interesting to see how the spinners adapt to the conditions in the Motera Stadium, because we have seen the significance of the dew coming into the second half of the matches. So it would be interesting to see how our Indian bowlers adapt to the condition, having played most of the matches at Ahmedabad in the India vs England series. So it's really going to be interesting to see what kind of combination that teams would prefer to go with when they reach the playoffs. But yeah, it's a big miss that the fans may not be able to experience such a magnificent occasion.
Sanchit, give me a team. Give me a team who's going to be the one that's going to be playing Mumbai Indians in the finals.
Well, I genuinely want to see a team like SRH make the finals this season, because I believe that they have such a great combination of squad put up, and their squad structure, I believe it's one of the best as compared to along with Delhi Capitals, who are actually the favorites to meet Mumbai Indians in the final this season. So, but I would really like Sunrisers Hyderabad to make the final this time, because the likes of the players that they have, the overseas talent that they have in their squad, it's simply magnificent, and the venues that they are playing in are actually favorable for them. But as a cricket fan, I really feel that Chennai Super Kings should be also making the playoffs, mainly because of the great man leading the side, MS Dhoni. It might possibly be his last ever IPL season. So what better way to finish off a magnificent career by lifting the IPL trophy at Ahmedabad?
All right, we've got 3 minutes to go. We're going to quickly get your take, Naresh. Who's Mumbai Indians going to play in the finals? Give me a team.
Okay, Sanchit took away my team SRH to play Mumbai Indians. But yeah, Punjab needs to be looked at. If KL Rahul and Mayank Agarwal have the season they had like last year, followed by Gale, Pooran, David Malan, mostly 2 of the 3 left-handers would play. I think they are actually the dark horses. They may create some more surprises than they did. They started Gale late last time, but let's look at the strategy this time. Which are the 2 left-handers they would pick out of the 3? Okay. So Punjab can create some surprises this time. They have sorted their overseas bowling attack by getting in youngsters from Australia. So it's going to be interesting to see Punjab's approach.
Okay, thank you for that, Rakesh. So you're looking at a Punjab bolter, Sunset's looking more SRH, but Nick, because I know you have to go, I need you to put your thoughts straight to a name. I want a name with who you're expecting to be a Mumbai Indians threat in Ahmedabad.
One word answer would be Delhi Capitals. I think they're the ones I think that might play the finals, a repeat of last season's final. But I see SRH right there. I mean, a game here or there, they could well be the team that plays Mumbai in the finals. But I'd go with Delhi Capitals.
Well, I love you already, Nick, because that's my tip. I'm a KKR fan, but I've got Delhi in my bones. I think they're going to win. All right, guys, we're hitting an exact hour. You've all been brilliant. I mean, I know that you're going to say that I'm the best looking. Just, guys, hold that back. I don't want to hear that. You don't need to say that. It's all right. The reality is, it's a word you need. Okay. The reality is we've finished our first hour together as a group. We've got some inklings as to winners. Thanks for your time. Deep was great. Nick, you were great. Rakesh, obviously Sanjit, we're all wonderful. So this is Norman Kochannek here on a great platform that is Extra Time. We'll be here for the entire series, both pre and post match, with lots of interesting aspects to talk about. We've set the table now. It's a matter of coming and eat with us, and we'll entertain you, including our fans. Go the Bharat Army, go the IPL. Thank you for your time, guys. This is Norman Kochannek signing off.
Thank you, Norman.
Extra Time.
See you.
Thanks, Norman.
All the best, guys.
Thanks for having
It was a
me.
great session.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
man.
much.
Bye-bye.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Speak soon.
Thank you.